certain at this point that this autumn is going to be unlike any other autumn, and we could finally see the long-awaited arrests of the Epstein criminals and the removal of this satanic gang that has taken over power. But one thing I promise you is that the Asians and their secret societies are going to demand their gold back. And if the people who stole their gold cannot pay it back, well, they can expect the consequences. And this has nothing to do with the American people. This has to do with people like Howard Lutnick and that whole crew of criminals who stole other people's money, and now they're being asked to pay back. And if they can't, they will pay the price. This is going to happen. So, again, it's not going to happen until after the summer, but in the meantime, it's going to keep falling apart in ways that are visible to everybody. And I think at this point, the public disgust at the ruling regime in the United States is so great that it's just going to naturally collapse. It cannot continue. There's not enough people who believe it anymore. But what we need to do is make sure the White Hats have a credible alternative to restore good government working for the people, instead of having a chaotic bout of anarchy and street violence and killing. That's what we want to avoid. We want to have an orderly transfer of power to people who actually represent the people themselves. Restoration of democracy, rule of law, and freedom of the press. That's what we're fighting for. And a return of all the money that was stolen through a central bank fraud. And we're going to make sure it happens. And the American people will be freed. The people of the planet are hoping to help the Americans. And the Jews will be freed from millennia of Babylonian slavery. It's all going to end well, but we're going to have a lot of chaos as the system continues to collapse first. So, get ready for it, because it's coming. Okay, well, that's what I have to say for myself today. Now I'd like to answer questions from readers and viewers.
Hi, Ben. We have our first question for today. Can you tell us a little bit about the Canadian wildfires and what is happening there? Do you have any speculations?
There's always been wildfires in Canada, but in recent years, it looks like they're being deliberately causing these wildfires for reasons that I cannot quite fathom. But I am in Canada right now, and the wildfires are not nearly as bad as they were last year. That much I can say. But, every year we do have wildfires, but there seems to be something else going on, and I'll try to find out more to see what the motive is if they're trying to cause mass wildfires. But this year it doesn't seem too bad.
Evan, what are your thoughts on Lindsey Graham's death? And do you believe he was killed? Do you think there was any foul play?
It's almost certain that he was killed. He was in the Ukraine visiting a drone factory on July 10th. And that drone factory was bombed by the Russians. Now, the official announcement of his death was on July 11th, but various people have pointed out that he could not possibly have flown back in time to die at that, just the train and plane schedules mean it was impossible. So the consensus now is that he was killed in a Russian strike on the drone factory he was visiting in Ukraine. But I did get my own personal contacts in the U.S. military intelligence to say he was killed by the White Hats using electromagnetic weapons. I don't know which is true, but I don't think very many people believe it was a natural death. And that man, he was evil. He was saying that Israel is more important than the United States. A dead Russian is a good Russian. And his removal is a very positive sign that the White Hats are taking the initiative. And I believe that a few other people, in his group are now looking for a place to hide because they know they're next.
Ben, in your weekly reports, the CIA, MI6, and MSB are frequently mentioned, but could you explain expose the individual names who are serving or following the CIA or U.S. shadow government terrorists in Japan, South Korea, India, China, most probably Rockefellers, infested corrupt officials, in West Africa? At least I know of such cases in Japan, such as Taro Aso, who is one of the Rothschilds clan and serving for the Satanists' interests.
Now, the CIA and FSB and Mossad, they're not monoliths. They have, all of them, their white hats and their dark hats, people working towards different agendas. I talked to Russian FSB people who have visited Japan, who are very, have deep understanding of Japanese culture and civilization, and are friendly to Japan. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, I believe, has a Japanese mistress. He comes sometimes to secretly visit, and he's a Japan lover. The problem is, of course, that Japan is under the control of some not very nice people. And yes, Taro Aso, he's definitely a high-level Rothschild representative. The story I heard is that his daughter is married to a member of that family or a servant of that family, but his actions over the years show that. So there is a problem. But the thing is about all these agencies is that even years ago I talked to someone who was involved in killing 1 million people in Indonesia to remove President Sukarno, and he said that he had no choice. He either had to do that or be killed. And he said that at the time he thought that it was important to stop the communists, so he believed it, and at the same time he had no choice. And I think a lot of these agency people are following orders and will be killed if they disobey. So the key is to change the people at the very top so that these very dangerous and powerful people are no longer being forced to do evil things, and instead we can use them for the good. But the important thing is we cannot just try to kill them all or put them in jail. We need to redirect them, because otherwise, well, what I told the Asians is that it's cheaper to feed a guard dog than it is to fight a hungry wolf. So we're hoping to take the people from these various agencies and set them to work with the new job of protecting the people instead of trying to destabilize governments in order to steal resources, which basically is what they've been doing until now. But it's going to take time, and it's going to have to be done with full public view so that nothing nefarious can happen. When everybody's watching, it's hard to do bad stuff. So we're going to make it transparent. Next.
Then, do you think Kurt Metzger is a serious source of original information? The Q series was validated by Trump himself, though it may have been hijacked in later iterations. I believe it was planned by Epstein and Bannon. What are your thoughts?
The Q thing at first seemed to be kind of hopeful, and it did start exposing things, but definitely it turned out to be a dud. And I've seen, and I've even passed on the reports that it was created as a kind of live action role playing thing to distract patriots, to give them false hope. And the fact is that the Q revolution has not taken place. The plan that we trusted has not come to fruition, and instead what we're watching is the bankruptcy of the U.S. corporation and the destruction of the Trump brand. So that's the basic results of what happened. I think what we need to do is, instead of worrying about a secret group like Q, is we all need to keep pushing the truth in every way we can, and it's the truth that will set us free, not some secret group like Q, which in the end seems to have distracted us. Next
And then we
question.
have our last question for today. How bad will it be when the USA economy collapses? Do you find or feel that it will be a horrific situation? No money, no trade, no food being transported? Or do you think everyone will continue to do their jobs as usual just for the sake of everybody else?
Well, most people who do their daily jobs are part of something that will continue no matter what happens in Washington, D.C. Or anywhere else. But the fact is that already two-thirds of Americans are having trouble paying groceries, and there could well be some kind of crisis where people cannot get gasoline and where groceries will be scarce. But I don't believe there will be mass starvation. There may be some anarchy, there may be some street fighting, there may be some hardship, but there's not going to be mass death or mass starvation in any scenario that I can think of. The best scenario is to have the military white hats step in, take over control of the Federal Reserve Board and the Treasury, and start an orderly process, with a jubilee in mind, and that's what we're fighting for. But even the worst case scenario, all you're going to see is gasoline rationing, food rationing, and riots. But it's not going to get worse than that. Okay, well, that's what I have to myself. We are continuing to watch the slow death spiral of the United States of America Corporation. And it's starting to get ugly for a lot of American people. Recent opinion polls from the Washington Post show that two-thirds of Americans are having trouble affording groceries. That's food, okay? That's survival. And 19% are having to use savings. Another 8% are using debt just to eat. This in, one of the richest agricultural regions on earth. This is a sign of systemic failure. And it has as its source the U.S. Treasury Department and the Federal Reserve Board. Now, I want you to watch this little clip of so-called U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent talking about the U.S. dollar.
What are we looking at here? These look exquisite.
Yep, so these are the displays of our currency over the years. Some of it, like we used to have silver certificates. We used to be backed by silver, sometimes gold. And then in the 70s, we just went to what was called fiat currency, where you didn't have to keep gold or silver in the vault. If any of these are still outstanding, though, the silver or gold for them is the at Fort Knox, waiting for them to be claimed if so needed.
Have you visited Fort Knox?
I haven't. People on my staff has. We're going to the Treasurer's office. The Treasurer has been to Fort Knox, and I am happy to say all gold is present and accounted for. The U.S. has the largest pile of gold in the world, over $1 trillion at current market value.
And we're getting more gold from Venezuela.
Now, notice he says that the U.S. dollar is fiat. It's not backed by anything now. But that there's $1 trillion worth of gold-backed and silver-backed American money in circulation. Now, first, let's talk about the fiat part. Because what happened, and you can check this out for yourself, is that when the United States ran out of gold in 1972, and they ran out because they broke the promises they made to the people who gave them the gold. These are mainly Asian royal families, and they gave the gold on the promise that they would be developing the entire planet. Instead, they used the money only to strengthen countries under their political control. So that was Western Europe, Japan, North America, and everyone else was kind of left out in the cold. So they all cashed in their dollars and took back their gold. The United States ran out of gold, and what they did was, as we all know, they backed it up with Saudi Arabian oil, and it became the petrodollar. Now, Besant is right in saying that it's now backed by nothing because it is no longer backed by oil. And what's happening is, you know, money can be backed by nothing if people trust you. If I give someone my word, and I've known this person for 20 years and I've never broken a promise, they'll probably, just give me money, and because I gave them my word, I pay it back. But the United States, their word is worth nothing now. They've broken so many treaties and promises that nobody trusts them, and nobody's lending them money, and their so-called dollar is very, very limited where it can be used. Basically, it can only be spent on data centers inside the United States at this point. But getting back to Besant, the Dragon family provided documents to the United States Treasury representative at the United States Embassy in Tokyo, showing that they gave 200 tons of gold to the U.S. Treasury. And they want to cash the bonds using gold, this gold as a support for this. Unfortunately, they have ignored the Dragon family. Now the Dragon family is asking for gold back instead. And guess what? They don't have the gold. I have confirmed multiple times with the U.S. intelligence and even the former Trump regime when the real Trump was in power, and they admit that there is no gold in Fort Knox. What they have is gold-plated tungsten. So here's the thing. The Dragon family, these are serious people. They have hundreds of thousands of assassins working for them. And they've been very polite and very patient. But either Besant gives them the gold, or they cashes a check, or they're going to go after him. And I wouldn't trust him to be alive very long after that. But the point is that the United States itself, and I'm not talking about the American people or the Republic of the United States, I'm talking about the United States of America Corporation that replaced the U.S. Republic in 1871, and the privately owned Federal Reserve Board are doomed. The clock is ticking. And this is being seen in the Middle East, because up until now they were able to use Saudi Arabia to control the world's oil markets. They would tell Saudi Arabia to ramp up production, and they brought the price down to $27 a barrel, and that forced Russia to give up and join them. Now they can't do that. They've lost that ability. They can sell $12 million barrels of oil a day, but right now all they're able to export is 4 million barrels a day, and that's 3 million barrels a day less than before the Iran war started. Now Iraq, which is the other source of U.S. oil, is down to a fifth of what they had, and Kuwait is down 1 million barrels per day. So the point is that the people who back the Federal Reserve Board are running out of oil, and there's an international boycott at all levels. And this is taking place at a very deep level. So, for example, last week they had a NATO summit, and the United States was asking everybody to buy American weapons, but nobody did. They're all busy buying each other's weapons, and they're boycotting the U.S. weapons industry, especially after their huge loss in the war against Iran. Suddenly, there's no reason to pay extra for weapons that are inferior to much cheaper versions. And this process is going to continue. And as I predicted, the United States and Iran have been sort of attacking each other because no fundamental deal has been reached, and it cannot be reached until the satanic, child-torturing owners of the U.S. corporation are removed. But in the latest, I've been contacted by the Iranian authorities. They told me that they attempted a marine landing at, what's the location? Chabahar. And the Americans suffered huge losses and were forced to retreat, which makes sense. Now, J.D. Vance has gone public and renounced the people who are going against the agreement he reached with Iran, the Memorandum of Understanding. He says they're deliberately trying to undermine it. And right now, Benjamin Netanyahu, or should I say the hardline faction that uses him as their avatar because the real man is gone, are in deep trouble. Take a look at this clip showing that Israeli special forces have been hunting the Netanyahu regime.
The political landscape in the occupied territories has been thrown into unprecedented turmoil. Reports are emerging that the occupation prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, fled Tel Aviv in a state of panic just hours after a shocking incident in which masked soldiers, allegedly from the occupation's own military forces, stormed a government office compound, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. This is not the kind of dissent that can be swept under the rug. This is a direct fracture in the very security apparatus that has propped up the extremist agenda for years.
Okay, so the Israelis, the Jewish people, are rising against their satanic overlords, and it's about time. And it's not just the special forces. So-called Netanyahu cannot even show his face in the Israeli parliament. Look at this next clip. So the people who control Netanyahu are doomed. They have no support even in Israel at this point. They're a tiny radical faction, and they are being hunted. Now the other obvious thing that needs to happen is that the fake Donald Trump needs to be removed. I mean, that show has become so sick and degenerate at this point that it's amazing they're allowing to continue it. It's just, it has to be deliberate. I mean, now they're putting out